Be nice. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under instruction to be nice from the National Party member, I'll do what I can. But I rise to add the Green Party's opposition to this the Policing Cost Recovery Amendment Bill at third reading. And I really want to just speak to the context of this bill first up. And it is, I think I at least have growing concern about the state of our core social infrastructure in New Zealand, and that it's a concern that it's not keeping up with population growth or changing social mores or need. We're seeing this very clearly in the health sector. We're seeing this at breaking point in our social sector, and we are hearing this from the police. I take the word of caution from one editorial in the paper today that the opposition always talks about problems in policing coming up to an election and how the police never have enough resource. That being said, I do think it is important to note that there has been a $90 million cut in real terms to the police budget at a time where we are expecting more from them in terms of police vetting for vulnerable children, in terms of response to sexual violence, in terms of response to domestic violence. They have been suffering a real-term funding cut. And so it goes to the core of this government's approach, is that they seem to be prioritising reducing government over ensuring that our society works, ensuring that the vision that they bandy around all over the place is actually able to be delivered by us. And I think this is another example of that, because we've had the Vulnerable Children's Act brought in this increased need for vetting, and we've heard that mentioned again and again from National Party members across the way, which to me shows up a gaping flaw in their logic behind this bill, where they're saying they're bringing in this cost recovery for vetting because it's a private benefit, not a social good. The entire argument of the Vulnerable Children's Act was that that vetting provided a public good. You can't have it both ways. It doesn't make sense. So this bill goes right to the heart of that. And it goes also, as I think this whole area exposes this government's lack of planning and how they don't seem to see things in a joined-up way. We had the Vulnerable Children's Act and an increased requirement for vetting. There was going to be a consequent pressure on police to be able to respond to that. And I understand that there has been, and we've heard it from the government, an increased demand for vetting. A no-brainer was going to happen. And that's meant that the waiting times to get vettings through the police has gone up from an average of 6.3 days in 2013 to 21.7 days in 2015 because of that increased demand created by legislation, because this House said there was a public good in that. The government should have seen that coming. Everyone else saw that coming, yet they didn't put in the resources to be able to deliver the intent of the legislation. So here they are now, soon on the back of that, putting in legislation, scrambling around to be able to address the damage that's been caused by them not thinking that through in the first place. And they're putting the cost on to the rest of society while they've been actually, collecting our taxes to be able to deliver our social services and our social intent, and yet they're not doing it. So they really do need to be called out on that. And I think it is worth saying that I heard at a social services meeting this week of somebody in a tertiary institution who was saying that the vetting has got in the way it hasn't been resourced, a real impact on them. that they're having backlogs of over 3 weeks being able to get staff members vetted, and that while they're going to now be charged costs on top of that in our tertiary institutions who should be using that money for education.